I never thought a simple trip to my dad's old house would turn into something I couldn't shake off for days. It started on a lazy Sunday afternoon, the kind where nothing seems urgent, and the sun filters through dusty curtains just enough to make everything look a little warmer than it really is. I was helping my dad sort through some of the old boxes in the attic, boxes we had barely touched since I was a kid. Most of it was junk, or at least stuff that felt like junk. Old clothes, broken toys, a few photo albums. But then I saw it, an old VHS tape lying on its side, half buried under some yellowed newspapers. There was no label, nothing to hint at what was on it. Just the plain black tape with the faint smell of decades-old plastic. For some reason, I was instantly drawn to it. My dad didn't even remember it being there. He squinted at it, scratched his head and said, "I don't even know where this came from." That's when my curiosity started taking over. I knew I shouldn't, but I wanted to see what was recorded on it. I wanted to know why it had been tucked away so carefully. I brought the tape back to my room. My old VCR was still in working condition, which was lucky because I've never really trusted streaming services to give the same feeling of anticipation that an old VHS does. There's something about the clicking of the tape going in, the hum of the machine, and the static screen before the video starts. It's like the world outside disappears, and you're left alone with whatever is waiting for you on that little magnetic strip. As soon as I pressed play, the screen flickered. It was grainy, almost unbearably so, like the image itself was struggling to come through. The first few seconds didn't make any sense. I saw a dimly lit room, almost empty, with shadows stretching across the walls. There was a sound, faint at first, like a creaking floorboard or maybe someone breathing softly in the distance. I leaned closer. Then the camera angle shifted suddenly and I realized it was a handheld recording. Someone was moving around, pointing the camera at different parts of the room as if they were searching for something, or someone. I froze when I noticed a figure in the corner. I couldn't see their face clearly, but they were standing very still, almost unnaturally so. Something about the way they held themselves made my stomach tighten. It wasn't a person acting, it was something else entirely, though I didn't know what yet. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a trick of the shadows, maybe it was the tape degrading after so many years, but the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me. The longer I watched, the more I started noticing small details. There were objects in the room I didn't recognize, things that looked old even back then, and they were arranged in a way that didn't make sense. Like someone had deliberately set them up to be seen, but not in any logical order. And then, the faint sound of someone whispering. At first, I thought it was the tape making noise like a defect. But it got louder, clearer, and I realized it was a voice. I couldn't make out the words at first, just soft, broken syllables, but it didn't feel like it was meant for me. It felt like it was meant to stay hidden, like I wasn't supposed to be hearing it at all. I wanted to turn it off. My hands shook a little, but something kept me glued to the screen. Curiosity, I guess. Maybe it was the same curiosity that had made me open the tape in the first place. The camera moved again, slowly panning across the room, and I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. There, on the far wall, was a photograph pinned crookedly. I leaned closer to see it better. The image was blurry, but it looked like a family, my family, or at least people who looked a lot like us. The edges of the photo were darkened, and there was something written at the bottom, almost too faded to read. But I swear as I squinted, the letters seemed to twitch. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. I put the tape on pause, rubbed my eyes, and even stepped back from the TV for a second. But when I looked again, the photo had changed. The people in it were in different positions and the shadows looked different. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't just a change in light, it was like something had moved while I wasn't looking. My pulse was racing now and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling my dad, but I didn't want to alarm him. After all, it was just an old tape, probably some forgotten home video. But deep down, I knew this was different. The atmosphere in my room felt heavier. The shadows in the corners seemed darker. Even my dog, who usually slept at the foot of my bed, was pacing nervously, growling at nothing I could see. I made myself watch a little longer, desperate for some logical explanation. The video continued to show the room, but now the perspective had changed completely. The camera was no longer pointing at the walls or the objects. It was pointing directly at me. My blood ran cold. My heart hammered in my chest. I looked around my room, half expecting someone to be there, but it was empty. The tape flickered, the image wavered, and then the screen went black for a moment before cutting to something even more disturbing. I won't lie. I thought about turning it off and never touching it again. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was something about that tape, something that felt alive, like it wanted me to keep watching. I knew, somewhere deep down, that the answers to the questions I hadn't even asked yet were hiding in the rest of the footage. And I also knew that once I saw them, nothing would ever feel normal again. That's when I made the decision to document everything, to record my reactions, and to try and understand what this tape really was. I had no idea where it came from, why it was in my dad's house, or what I was about to uncover. But one thing was certain: this was no ordinary home video. And whatever secrets it held, they were about to change everything I thought I knew about my family, my childhood, and even myself. I don't know if you've ever felt the kind of curiosity that's equal parts excitement and fear, the kind that makes you lean closer even when every instinct is screaming to run away. That's exactly what I felt as I prepared to watch the tape again. And now, as I sit here telling you this, I can still feel the weight of that moment pressing down on me, the same way it did when I first saw the flickering shadows on the screen. I don't want to spoil what happens next, because some things are better experienced firsthand. But I can tell you this: what I saw on that tape was not just disturbing, it was something I couldn't explain. Something that made me question what I knew about my own home. And if you're brave enough to keep watching with me, you'll see exactly why I couldn't walk away from it, no matter how much I wanted to. The VHS tape was just the beginning. What came after would make me rethink everything about the past and maybe even the present. And if you think you're ready for it, then stay with me, because I promise you, the story is just getting started. I decided to dig a little deeper into where that tape had come from before I even considered watching it again. My dad's house had always felt like a place full of memories, but now it felt heavier, like it was hiding something I hadn't noticed before. I started asking my dad questions casually at first, pretending I was just curious about old family stuff. "Do you remember making any home videos back then?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He looked at me, frowning, and shook his head. "Not really. Maybe some birthdays, but nothing like that." His answer didn't satisfy me, and I could tell he was brushing it off. I think he didn't want to remember, or maybe he genuinely didn't. But the way he avoided my eyes made me think there was more to it. I decided to take a closer look around the house, searching for other forgotten things that might give me a clue. The attic, where I had found the tape, was full of boxes stacked on top of each other like someone had just shoved decades of life into one corner. As I moved a few aside, I noticed a pile of old photographs, letters, and journals, some of them in my mom's handwriting, some I didn't recognize. One journal in particular caught my attention. It was small, leather-bound, and smelled faintly of smoke and mildew. Flipping through it, I realized it belonged to someone who had lived in the house long before I was born. The entries were odd, half diary, half notes. They talked about things that didn't make sense, strange occurrences that the writer insisted were real. At first, I thought it was just someone's imagination, but the more I read, the more I felt a strange connection to it, almost as if the events were leading up to something I was about to see. It became clear that the house itself had its secrets. There were mentions of rooms that no longer existed, voices that no one else could hear, and shadows that moved when no one was looking. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or something else, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the VHS tape was part of that same story, part of some hidden layer of the house's past. I decided to take a break and went down to the kitchen. My dad was sitting at the table, reading a newspaper, the same one that had yellowed pages and smelled faintly of old ink. I asked him about the people in the photographs I had found in the attic. He hesitated before answering. "Those were neighbors, family, friends. Some of them we don't talk about much anymore." His voice was calm, but there was a tightness in his jaw that I couldn't miss. I wondered why some people from our past had disappeared, why my dad didn't want to talk about them. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of the VHS tape kept running through my mind, the flickering shadows, the whispers, the photograph that seemed to move. I kept thinking maybe I should put it away, forget I had ever seen it. But curiosity had its grip on me, stronger than fear. I decided to set up my old camera and record myself watching it. That way, I could at least have a record, some proof if what I was seeing got worse. I set everything up carefully. The VCR hummed to life and I slid the tape in. The first few minutes were just static, the screen flickering in and out. Then I saw the same dimly lit room from before. But this time, I noticed something different, small details that had gone unnoticed. A chair was slightly out of place, a curtain swayed as if someone had just brushed past it, and a door in the corner, barely visible, seemed to lead to somewhere deeper. I couldn't see what was behind it, but I felt a pull like I had to know. The whispers started again, faint, almost teasing. I leaned closer to the screen trying to catch the words. It sounded like someone repeating a name, my name. I froze. My pulse raced and my hands shook. There was no way it could be me. The tape was decades old. How could it know my name? I tried to rationalize it, tell myself it was just my brain playing tricks, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I decided to take a break, thinking I needed to calm down before continuing. I left the room for a few minutes, but when I returned, I noticed something I hadn't before. The screen was blank, but the VCR had started rewinding on its own. I had never seen it do that before. I pressed stop, checked all the cords, and even unplugged it for a moment. Nothing seemed out of place, and yet the tape refused to stay still. It was as if it had a mind of its own, guiding me, tempting me to keep watching. Over the next few days I became obsessed. I spent every spare moment in the attic, going through old boxes, photographs, and letters. Every time I found something new, I felt closer to understanding the tape, but also deeper into a mystery I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. Some of the letters mentioned a hidden room and a watcher, who recorded events in secret. I wondered if the VHS was evidence of the same thing. Had someone been recording in my dad's house all those years ago? And if so, why? Even my dad started noticing changes. He would ask what I was looking for, and when I tried to explain, he just shook his head. "Don't get too carried away with old junk," he warned me. But I could see the worry in his eyes, and I knew there was more to this than he was letting on. I started piecing things together, the strange photographs, the journals, the VHS tape, and realized that someone had been documenting life in this house in a way that no one outside of it could understand. It felt deliberate, purposeful, almost like a warning. One night, as I was going through the attic again, I found a small key taped to the back of one of the photo albums. It was old, rusted, and looked like it hadn't been used in decades. My hands trembled as I held it, thinking of all the locked doors in the house I had never dared open. Could this key be connected to the hidden room mentioned in the letters? Or maybe to the very room I had seen on the tape? I didn't know, but I knew one thing: I had to find out. That's when I started noticing other things, subtle at first. Shadows that seemed too long, sounds in empty rooms, things slightly out of place. The house felt alive in a way it never had before, like it was responding to my curiosity, testing me. And the more I dug, the more I realized the VHS tape wasn't just a random home video. It was a piece of a puzzle, a fragment of a story that had been hidden for decades, waiting for someone like me to uncover it. I knew that finding the truth wouldn't be easy. It might even be dangerous. But something inside me refused to stop. Every detail, every strange occurrence, every whispered syllable pulled me closer, like the house itself was urging me forward. I couldn't ignore it. And deep down, I knew that once I started, there was no turning back. The VHS tape had opened a door I couldn't close, and whatever was waiting for me on the other side was going to change everything I thought I knew. I couldn't stop thinking about the key I had found. Every time I held it in my hand, it felt heavier, almost as if it carried the weight of all the years it had been hidden. That night, I decided to start searching for the lock it belonged to. The house was quiet, eerily quiet, except for the faint creak of the old wooden floors. I moved carefully, checking doors and cabinets I had never paid attention to before. Most of them were long forgotten, sealed shut or jammed with dust and cobwebs. In the corner of the hallway, I noticed a door that I had passed 1,000 times but never examined closely. The paint was faded, the handle tarnished with age. My heart started racing as I inserted the key, expecting it to be stuck or broken, but it turned with a smooth click. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase leading downward into darkness. I swallowed hard, the same mixture of fear and curiosity pulling me forward that I had felt with the VHS tape. I reached for my flashlight and carefully descended, each step echoing through the empty space. At the bottom I found a small, dimly lit room. It smelled faintly of mildew, dust, and something else I couldn't identify. My flashlight revealed walls covered in photographs, letters, and strange diagrams. There were sketches of people, some of them vaguely familiar, some I didn't recognize at all. At first, I thought it was just a collection of old memories, but the closer I looked, the more I realized the images were not random. They depicted moments I had lived through, things no one outside the house could have known. My hands shook as I ran my fingers over the photographs. Someone had been watching, documenting, recording everything. And somehow, this secret room had been left for me to find. I spent hours in that room piecing together what I could. Among the letters and photographs, I found notes referencing the VHS tape specifically. The handwriting was careful, almost methodical, as if the person wanted to make sure their message was preserved for someone who would come across it decades later. The notes didn't explain everything, but they hinted at a larger story, one that involved my family, the house, and the tape. There were mentions of mistakes, warnings, and something referred to repeatedly as the observer. I had no idea what that meant, but it felt personal, like it was connected to me in ways I couldn't yet understand. The more I uncovered, the more I started seeing patterns I hadn't noticed before. Some of the photographs showed rooms I had thought were empty or abandoned, always with shadows in the corners. Others included objects that I had seen in the VHS tape, now frozen in time. It was as if someone had been preparing a record, a story that only I could follow one piece at a time. I wondered why. Why had this been hidden and why now? Meanwhile, my dad started acting strangely. He didn't know I had found the key or the room, but he seemed restless, almost on edge. He would glance at me during meals, ask questions about my day that seemed pointed, as if trying to gauge how much I already knew. One evening, he sat me down in the living room and said quietly, "Some things in this house are better left alone. Some things aren't for us to understand." I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside I was more determined than ever. The VHS tape, the key, the hidden room, it all felt connected and I couldn't walk away now. I also started noticing little things that I hadn't before. The dog would growl at corners of the house where nothing was visible. Doors would be slightly ajar when I knew I had closed them. I heard faint noises in the attic, the kind that sounded like someone moving things around even though I was sure I was alone. At first I tried to brush it off, blaming the old house settling or the wind. But the feeling that I wasn't alone, that someone, or something, was watching only grew stronger. To try and make sense of it all, I began cataloging everything I found. I created a small notebook, jotting down the connections between the tape, the photographs, and the notes in the hidden room. The patterns were strange, almost obsessive. Some entries referenced specific times, specific events in my life, and even locations inside the house. It was like someone had been mapping out my life before I even knew I would be here. That thought alone made me uneasy, and yet I couldn't stop. I had to know who had done this and why. Then something new happened. The VHS tape, which I had been careful to store safely, went missing. I had left it on the shelf in my room, and when I returned it was gone. My heart skipped a beat. I checked the VCR, the floor, even the closet, but it was nowhere to be found. At first I thought maybe my dad had taken it, but when I asked he swore he hadn't touched it. That's when I started to suspect that whoever had left the tape, and the notes, was still here watching. It made the house feel smaller, the walls closing in, like I was being drawn deeper into a story I hadn't agreed to be part of. I began noticing other small, unsettling details. Photographs in the living room would be slightly turned, items on shelves would be shifted, and I would hear whispers just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes I would wake in the middle of the night to find the hidden room door open, even though I had locked it. I told myself it was paranoia, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Something wanted me to see everything, to uncover the truth, piece by piece. My friends noticed I was changing too. I started spending less time with them, making excuses, avoiding plans. When I tried to talk to someone about the tape or the hidden room, I realized it was impossible to explain without sounding crazy. And yet, the story was growing inside me, consuming my thoughts, pulling me into something I didn't fully understand. I had to know the whole truth, even if it meant walking into danger I couldn't see. The VHS tape, the hidden room, the strange letters, they were all connected. But the more I tried to understand, the more the mystery expanded. Every answer I found seemed to raise more questions. And now, with the tape missing, the shadows moving, and the sense that someone was watching, the tension in the house was unbearable. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something huge, something that would change everything if I ever reached the bottom. And I knew without a doubt that I was not going to be able to walk away until I found out what was really going on. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. The figure on the tape continued to ascend the stairs, step by step, and for a moment I was convinced it was moving through my house in real time. My chest tightened, my palms were sweaty, and the room felt impossibly small. Then, just as the figure reached the top, the camera on the tape shifted abruptly. The screen went dark for a beat before flickering back, and what I saw made me stop breathing. It wasn't just me on the tape anymore. There was someone else, a second figure, standing silently behind the first, their face hidden in shadow. I had no idea who it could be. The shape was vaguely familiar but impossible. My dad? No, the posture was different, deliberate. Someone, or something, was observing everything, and somehow, this second presence had been hidden in the background all along. It hadn't been part of the original recordings I had studied in the hidden room. This was new, and the realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wasn't just being watched. Someone had been altering the tape. I dropped the remote, and the VHS continued on its own, flipping from scene to scene faster than I could process. The hidden room appeared again, but now the photographs on the walls had changed. Faces I recognized had been crossed out, replaced with others I didn't know. Names I thought were familiar were scratched away, replaced by numbers or symbols that made no sense. My heart pounded and a cold dread spread through me. The house wasn't just hiding secrets anymore, it was rewriting them, reshaping reality in ways I couldn't understand. I felt a presence behind me and spun around, but the room was empty. My flashlight flickered, and the shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, like they were reaching for me. I stumbled backward toward the desk where the journals and letters lay scattered. That's when I noticed it. One of the photographs I had thought was permanent was now missing, replaced by a note written in hurried, jagged handwriting. It simply said, "You shouldn't be here. Stop now or it will follow." I felt panic rise in my chest, but I couldn't stop. Something inside me demanded that I keep going, that I understand what the tape wanted me to see. I grabbed the note and pressed it to my chest, then turned back to the screen. The VHS now showed my own bedroom from an angle I hadn't noticed before, a perspective that only someone standing behind me could have captured. And then I saw it, the second figure again standing in the corner, motionless, watching me. My hands trembled and my voice caught in my throat. It wasn't a recording of the past anymore, it was happening now, right in front of me. I stumbled back from the TV, my mind racing. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a glitch in the tape. But the air in the room had changed, it was heavier, almost suffocating. My dog whimpered and pressed close to my feet, refusing to look up. Something about the energy in the house felt alive, focused, almost sentient. It was as if the tape had become a portal, a way for someone, or something, to bridge the gap between what was recorded and what was happening now. And then I noticed something else. The hidden room door, which I had locked and secured, was slightly ajar. My heart sank. I hadn't touched it since I had left the key in the lock days ago. Whoever, or whatever, had been leaving the tape had also been here in my house, moving things without a sound. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave immediately. But I couldn't. I needed answers. The next moment made my stomach drop. On the screen, the first figure reached the top of the stairs and stopped. The camera slowly panned to show the second figure standing beside it. And then, the twist I wasn't ready for, the second figure lifted its head. And it wasn't a stranger. It was me. My own face, frozen in shadow, staring directly into the camera, but with eyes that weren't quite mine, colder, calculating, almost like a warning. I stumbled backward again, tripping over the notebooks and letters. I couldn't understand it. How could the tape show me like that, but not me? Some version of me, some reflection I didn't recognize. The room felt impossibly silent for a moment, and then a soft whisper echoed, the same chant from before, my name. Repeated, drawn out, insistent. It wasn't coming from the tape anymore, it was in the room, surrounding me, curling around my chest like icy fingers. I forced myself to breathe, gripping the flashlight tightly. That's when I realized the conflict had grown beyond the tape itself. It wasn't just about discovering old secrets, or finding hidden rooms, or understanding who had recorded it. Something had started to reach into the present, reshaping the way I saw my own reality. Every photograph, every letter, every moment of my life that I thought was private had been catalogued, altered, and now reflected back at me through this impossible recording. My dad's warnings echoed in my mind. Some things aren't for us to understand. I had ignored them, driven by curiosity. But now, as I watched the tape again, I realized the stakes were higher than I could have imagined. Whoever, or whatever, was behind the VHS wasn't just observing anymore. It was manipulating. It was testing me, pulling me deeper into the story, forcing me to confront things I wasn't ready to face. The tape clicked and rewound suddenly, faster than any VCR should have been able to. Scenes from earlier moments flashed on the screen, my first discovery of the hidden room, the letters, my own reactions. But now they were interspersed with images I didn't recognize. Doors I hadn't seen, hallways that didn't exist in the house, shadows and impossible shapes. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, like they were coaxing me forward, warning me, tempting me all at once. I realized then that I was part of the conflict now. I wasn't just an observer of the tape or the hidden room, I was in the story itself, a player in a narrative I couldn't control. Every decision I made, every step I took inside that house, was being watched, recorded, manipulated. And the second figure, the version of me on the tape, was proof that the line between what was real and what was recorded was already beginning to blur. I couldn't turn away, couldn't leave. Not now. Not when the stakes were this high, when the house, the tape, and the shadows had drawn me into something that felt bigger than myself. I had to find out what it all meant, even if it terrified me, even if it pushed me to the edge of everything I knew about my own life. The VHS tape had started as a mystery, but now it was a challenge, a confrontation that I couldn't avoid. And deep down, I knew the climax was coming. Whatever waited at the heart of the house, at the center of the tape, was about to make itself known. I knew I had to confront whatever was behind the VHS tape once and for all. The house felt alive around me, every creak of the floorboards and flicker of shadows amplifying my fear. I carried the tape in my hands like a lifeline and a warning, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Every instinct told me to leave, to run far away from this place, but I couldn't. I had followed the breadcrumbs for too long. The hidden room, the photographs, the whispers, it all led to one place. The staircase to the hidden room felt longer this time, each step heavy, echoing in the silence. As I reached the bottom, the door creaked open just enough to reveal the room bathed in dim, flickering light. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The photographs, the letters, the scattered notebooks. But the air had changed. It was thick with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath. And then I saw it, the second figure. It was standing near the center of the room, motionless, but not entirely shadowed this time. As I stepped closer, my flashlight illuminating the space, I saw that it was me, or rather, a version of me. My face was identical, yet the expression was unreadable, cold, almost deliberate. I froze, my heart hammering. The VHS tape was still running on the floor in front of me, the static screen slowly fading to show the same scene. Me standing exactly where I was now, facing myself. I realized then that the conflict had never been about the tape or the hidden room, it was about me. All the photographs, the journals, the whispers, they had been designed to make me confront myself, my choices, and the hidden fears I had ignored for so long. The second figure, the one on the tape, wasn't an intruder. It was a reflection, a warning, a mirror of everything I had tried to escape. I could feel it studying me, weighing me, testing me. The whispers grew louder, insistent, filling the room. Face it, they seemed to say. Face yourself. My hands shook as I stepped forward, unsure if I was meeting a stranger or confronting the deepest parts of my own mind. And then the unexpected happened. The figure spoke, not in words but in images. Flashes of memories I had buried, times I had been careless, moments I had hidden from my family, fears I had refused to admit, flickered across the room like a silent montage. I realized that this was the climax of everything, the VHS, the house, the hidden room, it was all a confrontation with myself. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed, my mind racing to process the torrent of images and emotions. But then the figure extended a hand. It wasn't threatening, it was almost guiding me. I hesitated, then reached out, my fingers brushing the other version of myself. A shock ran through me, a mixture of fear and release. The air shifted instantly, lighter, almost calm. The whispers faded. The tape went silent. And in that moment I understood. The conflict wasn't about being watched or spied on. It was about acknowledging the parts of myself I had ignored, confronting the hidden corners of my own life, and accepting the truth. For a moment relief washed over me. The tension, the fear, the relentless pursuit of the unknown, it all seemed to have an end. The house felt quieter, normal almost, and the second figure began to fade, slowly dissolving into the shadows. I thought it was over. I thought I had won. And then the tape clicked again. The screen flickered back to life and my heart stopped. It wasn't showing the hidden room or me this time. It was showing my dad standing at the bottom of the stairs holding another VHS tape, one I had never seen before. His eyes were wide, his expression tense. And then he spoke, his voice coming through the static. I tried to stop it, but now it's your turn. I dropped the tape in shock. My mind spun. There was more to this than I had realized. The second plot, the deeper secret. It wasn't over. The house, the tapes, the hidden rooms, they weren't just a test of me. They were a cycle, a chain that spanned generations, waiting for someone to confront it fully. And now it was my responsibility. I stumbled back, breathing heavily, looking around the room. Everything felt alive again, the shadows twitching, the photographs shifting slightly, the air thick with anticipation. I realized that the VHS tape, the hidden room, the second figure, it had all been building to this moment. I had faced myself, but the story wasn't finished. The final twist wasn't just about me confronting my past. It was about what came next, what I was now being drawn into, something far bigger and far more mysterious than I had ever imagined. And as the screen went dark again, leaving only the faint hum of the VCR, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing in that house, or in that tape, would ever be the same again. The cycle had passed to me, and whatever secrets, warnings, or truths were still hidden, I was now part of the story. The VHS had not only revealed the past, it had rewritten the future, and I was standing at the edge of it, unsure if I was ready to step forward but unable to turn back. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the dark screen of the VCR, my hands still shaking from the confrontation with the second figure. The hidden room around me seemed quieter, the shadows less threatening, though I knew that wasn't permanent. Somehow I felt changed. Not just because of what I had seen but because I had faced it. For the first time in years, I understood that the fear I had felt wasn't just about the tape or the house. It was about me. My own secrets, my own hesitation, my own failure to confront the parts of myself I didn't want to see. Slowly I stood up and looked around the hidden room. The photographs and letters were exactly as I had left them, but they no longer felt ominous. Instead, they felt like markers, reminders of the story I had uncovered. The journals, which had once seemed cryptic and confusing, now made sense in a way. They weren't just random notes, they were a guide, a breadcrumb trail for someone who needed to confront the house, the past, and ultimately themselves. I ran my fingers over the familiar handwriting, feeling a strange connection to the person who had written them decades ago. Someone had left these for me, knowing that I might need guidance to face this mystery. I realized I had questions I hadn't even thought to ask until now. Who had made the tapes? Why had they chosen my family, my house, to record these events? And how had they known what would happen decades later? My dad's warnings echoed in my head, and I realized that he had known part of the truth all along, but not everything. The house held its secrets tightly, and some things I understood were never meant to be fully explained. The presents, the tapes, the hidden room, they were tools, ways to force someone to see what they had been avoiding, and I had passed that test. I gathered the remaining photographs and letters carefully, arranging them in order as best I could. The patterns I had noticed before were still there, but instead of feeling threatening, they now felt purposeful. They told a story about observation, mistakes, warnings, and choices. I could see now that the second figure, the version of me on the tape, wasn't meant to scare me but to prepare me, to show me the consequences of ignoring the hidden truths in my life. The VHS tape had been a bridge connecting the past and present, and it had guided me toward understanding. I went upstairs slowly, careful not to rush. My dad was in the kitchen, reading the same newspaper he always did, but this time he looked up when he saw me. There was a softness in his expression, a mixture of relief and concern. I sat down across from him, unsure how much to say but feeling the need to share something. I think I understand now, I said quietly. The tape, the hidden room, it wasn't just about secrets. It was about me. He nodded slowly, setting the newspaper aside. I hoped you would see it that way. The house has always demanded attention. It doesn't let you hide from yourself. I tried to prepare you in little ways, but you had to discover it on your own. His voice was steady, but there was a weight behind it, a knowledge of what had been waiting for me in the hidden corners of the house. I realized then that the house had been shaping both of us, holding pieces of memory, warning us in ways we didn't fully understand until now. Over the next few days I began putting things back in order. The hidden room remained, but I organized it, arranging photographs and notes so that they told the story clearly. The VHS tape I placed carefully on the shelf, not out of fear but out of respect for what it represented. The house no longer felt oppressive. The shadows seemed less threatening. I could still feel a presence in the corners, faint like a lingering reminder, but it no longer made my skin crawl. I had faced it, confronted the fear, and come out the other side. I also noticed changes in myself. I was more aware, more reflective. The experience had forced me to consider my own choices, my own secrets, and the ways I had avoided uncomfortable truths. I thought about my dad, about how he had carried this knowledge quietly, guiding me without revealing everything. I thought about the generations before me, the people who had left messages, recordings, and warnings. And I realized that my story wasn't just about fear, it was about growth, understanding, and connection across time. Even the dog, who had been anxious for days, seemed calmer. The house felt lived in but no longer haunted in the same way. The tension had lifted, replaced by a sense of awareness. I had faced the unknown, confronted the strange and inexplicable, and come away stronger, more present, and more in tune with the history around me. The hidden room, the VHS tape, the photographs, they were all a part of a larger story, and now I had the perspective to see it. One afternoon, while going through a box of old photographs in the attic one last time, I found something I hadn't noticed before, a small, folded note tucked between two pictures. I opened it carefully and it read simply, "You have seen the past. You have faced yourself. The future is yours to write." I felt a chill but not a fear. It was a reminder, a final nudge to stay aware, to continue learning, and to respect the story I had uncovered. It was also a warning. The house's lessons weren't over, and I had to remain vigilant. As I walked through the house one final time, I paused at the hidden room door. I could feel the quiet energy behind it, the echoes of all that had happened. I knew that the VHS tape and the hidden room weren't just relics of the past. They were reminders, reflections, and tools for growth. The house had challenged me, forced me to confront myself, and in the end had given me understanding. I felt a sense of peace but also a lingering curiosity. There were still shadows I didn't fully understand, whispers I hadn't completely deciphered, and mysteries that might one day reveal themselves again. I sat back in my room, the last rays of sunlight spilling through the window, and reflected on everything. The VHS tape had started as a disturbing mystery, but it became a journey. I learned that fear often masks truth, that confronting what we avoid is necessary, and that even the things that seem impossible or inexplicable can carry lessons if we are brave enough to face them. My family, the house, and even the generations before me had all played a role in shaping this story, and now it was part of my life. Before leaving the attic for good, I took one last look at the boxes and shelves, the hidden corners of the house that had held so much history and mystery. The VHS tape, the notes, and the photographs weren't just objects. They were pieces of a puzzle, fragments of a narrative that spanned time. I understood now that the house had always been more than a home. It was a mirror, a teacher, a guardian of memories and truths. And I had finally learned to see it clearly. The experience left me with a new awareness, not just of the house but of myself. I had confronted fear, faced the unknown, and discovered that sometimes the most disturbing things aren't monsters or shadows. They are the truths we hide from, the parts of ourselves we refuse to see. And while the house remained full of secrets, I no longer felt trapped. I felt prepared, aware, and strangely grateful. The VHS tape, the hidden room, and the whispers had all led me to this moment. And as the last sunlight faded, I realized that life would continue, the house would remain, and some mysteries would linger. But I had faced them. I had faced myself. And in that I found closure. The VHS tape, once a source of fear, had become a lesson. The hidden room, once a place of shadows, had become a space of understanding. And the house, with all its whispers and secrets, had become something I could finally respect.